The final boss is back. It's go time. Season 3 is here. Are you tuning in? Every Sunday is Sitting Down Sundays with the final boss. Get ready for an inspiring journey as we dive deep into the transformation from the nation's capital to the entertainment capital of the world. This is the conversation that will ignite your dreams and fuel your ambitions. What you'll experience: game-changing insights from industry leaders, real talk about making impossible dreams possible, the blueprint for leveling up your life, motivation that hits different. This isn't just another podcast episode. This is your wake-up call to greatness. Don't just listen, absorb, don't just hear. Transform, don't just dream, execute. Drop a like in the comments if you're ready to level up with us.
Welcome to the Final Boss Podcast, man. Oh man, listen, it's late night edition, right? I've done this before, and you know, when we have these type of tech level issues, um, I gotta resolve them. And listen, once it's resolved, then we can march on. And that's exactly what we're doing. We are marching on. Man, that was trying, but I didn't give up on you guys. Excuse me, I did not give up. And look, you know, so I must like I'm under attack, man. I have to be under attack, spiritual attack or something, because it's been one thing after another for the last week, and today is no different. So we are here. I am here. And to each elaborate like single one of you, man, listen, we're not going to let that dampen the mood. We are going to get this thing rocking and rolling very shortly. If you see the line is going up and down, the lighting is one of the issues that needed to be resolved. And sometimes if it's not bright enough in the room, like it needs more light, as if we would get that. But right now it's going to be a part of the aesthetic. We're not going to worry about that. The biggest thing was the sound and the other issues we were having. So listen, man, welcome. This is episode number 211. And to each and every single one of you, no matter where you are and where you're watching, if you're watching on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, Kick, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, or Spotify, man, thank you for being here, man. This is episode number 211. And look, it's amazing, man. It's amazing times. We are 89 episodes away from the season 5, the harvest. I have to say that. We are doing a countdown to the next season. And we started early this time because it matters, right? It absolutely matters. So we're going to go ahead and get ready and get into the show, man. Let's get rid of these banners right here. And I do apologize for the late start, man. And those of you who are still here with us, thank you for staying. Thank you for staying. We greatly appreciate you. And, you know, these things happen. These things happen. But the show must continue. The show must continue. So this is Sitting Down Sundays, right? Sitting Down Sundays, man, with the Final Boss, with me, right? And tonight's conversation is a special one. You know, we've been having these enlightened type of rebirth related conversations on this show since season 4 started. And tonight, man, is no different. So imagine this, right? Let's get right into it. Imagine. Wait, before I do that, let me. Imagine the world just named their moment the same thing you named your season, right? different continents, different traditions, different disciplines, all landed on the same word, rebirth. It's starting to trend, right? I've been talking about the rebirth since the reckoning, right? And now it's starting to trend. I was watching a Spider-Man trailer the other day, and at the end, it blew my mind. At the end of the Spider-Man trailer, it said, entering the rebirth. And I said, wow, I definitely must be on to something. So that's what we're getting ready to get into. And at that moment, it all landed on that. The rebirth, right? That is not coincidence. That is assignment. And tonight we're going to discuss and through this and sit down inside the eye of the storm and map what the rebirth actually is. The reset is already doing, and with the, I'm sorry, my voice is not 100% right, but we're getting there. The rebirth actually is. And what the reset already is doing to civilization right now. And why 89 episodes from tonight, the harvest arrives exactly on schedule. That's why it's important to not miss an episode, right? So pull your chairs up, grab your pen and paper, right? Grab your pen and paper. Because this one is for the ones who stayed. Good God Almighty. Oh, man, that is crazy work. Right? And we're going to start off tonight with the brass tacks. So tonight's brass tacks comes from none other than moi, right? And here it is. You didn't create the timing. You were assigned to it. The only question left is whether you show up worthy of the assignment. Man, that's so fitting for tonight. It's so fitting and compelling at the same time. Right? So, if you're just now joining us, this is your first time, welcome to the show. Welcome to the room, right? This is where the real ones sit. And good evening. Good evening. And here's the greeting of the day. I didn't give it to you guys earlier. So here it is for entertainment purposes only. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Welcome to the Final Boss Podcast. I am the one and only, the Final Boss. This is your moment. If you didn't find us, we found you. And now it's time to tune in, right? It is time to tune in. And I need you guys, before we go any further, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to make a decision how you're going to show up for this next episode. And sit with that, right? Sit with that. Absolutely. I would definitely add you. Thank you for joining us. Sit in that silence, right? Because before the show aired, we were supposed to come on at 9 p.m., but we're having technical difficulties, specifically sound issues. So let's sit in some silence real quick, right? And there's no background noise. There's no half listening to the noises around you. They may be coming from your kitchen, from your TV, or from your radio, or from somebody talking to you in the background, right? I need you to sit into that silence. And if you're doom scrolling and you hear things that are coming off the scroll from different pictures and videos and reels and things that you're listening to, I need your attention. Stop doom scrolling, right? Because this episode specifically demands your full presence, right? Demand your full presence. Not because I need it from you, because you need it from yourself. Right? And what we're walking through tonight is the kind of conversation that changes the direction of a week, a month, or even a season, as we're in season 4 of the Rebirth, right? Going into season 5, the harvest, and 89 more episodes. Literally 19 weeks from now, we'll be in a new season, right? So stay along and pay attention, right? And here's the thing. You have to ask yourself, are you actually in the rebirth? You may still be in a reckoning. And if you're still in a reckoning, that's because you haven't done the work, right? You haven't done the work. In order to be in a rebirth, you have to have done the work to be in a rebirth, right? Half presence gets you half the value. And tonight is worth too much for that, right? This is Sitting Down Sundays, the show that lives exactly where its name says, right? We sit, we go still, we stop performing for 60 minutes, and we start processing, right? Because most people in 2026 are moving through so much chaos at such a rapid speed that they never touch the ground long enough to understand what ground they're standing on. And tonight we fix that, like we always do on every episode of Sitting Down, right? Because this is where we land. We're in season 4 of the Rebirth. And I need to establish right here in the opening that this is not a label we picked because it sounded good for a season theme. The Rebirth is a declaration about the precise civilizational moment we are living inside. Tonight, I'm going to prove it with evidence that exists completely independent of anything I've ever built. That's why this episode is so important, right? And to my smarts, the critical thinkers, the analytical ones, the ones who will not accept conclusion without data. Tonight, we bring the receipts, verified, cross-referenced, and multidisciplinary, right? And to my final bosses, the empire builders actively constructing something in the middle of chaos. Tonight, we map the actual terrain we are operating on. Not the terrain the headlines describe. Ignore the headlines. Right? The terrain underneath everything that's visible. And to my motivators, the coaches, the leaders, the ones who are the strong presence in every room while quietly carrying their own weight. Tonight is permission. Permission is to acknowledge the full size of the moment that you are holding and to understand why it was placed on someone built to carry it. And to my warriors, battle tested, scar tissued, still standing, tonight is confirmation. What you survived had a sequence. The sequence has a name, and the name is producing something you're going to want to be present for when it arrives. Tonight, this episode, you have no exits, no bathroom breaks, no hallway passes. Tonight, we go all in on why and what actually is inside a collapsing world. Right? So let me set the foundation on this entire conversation and what it stands on, because I do not walk a community into a deep discussion without establishing context first, right? And here's the context. Context is not me clearing my throat that I often do because I've lost my voice. Context is the difference between information you can use and information you cannot place, right? Season 4, The Rebirth, launched on March 12th, 2026. That's 312, right? Same day, Go Time hit Amazon #1 bestseller status in 3 categories simultaneously. 2 things built separately, arriving at the same destination on the same day without engineered conclusion, without engineered collision, right? When you've been doing this long enough, you learn to recognize what alignment looks like, what patterns look like, especially when they show up. It does not announce itself. Patterns don't announce themselves. It just arrives. And the evidence is undeniable. And here's something else. This is episode number 211, which I might have to do some research on, right? Because we started a whole hour later, right? There's a reason for that. Maybe there were some eyes that needed to watch the show and be a part of the show that normally wouldn't see the show. I can't explain it. But for whatever reason, it was an alignment. Whatever reason, 211 has something to do with it. And I'm telling you, as my tech witness was with me as we were troubleshooting, everything went wrong that could go wrong. And then it ended up being a simple fix, right? It ended up being a simple fix that lasted for over an hour, right? And I want you to know something, man, because every episode of season 4 carries a structural obligation. And I'm not going to let that drift, right? The Rebirth is not a title we wave at the front of an episode and set down, right? It is a lens, right? Every conversation this season runs through the same 3 questions. What is dying? What is being born? And what does the inline in between demand of you? What did the stillness demand of you? What does the darkness demand of you? What does the inaction demand of you? What does the void demand of you? Right? These aren't poetic questions. These are operational ones. The answers determine how you move through this season in your actual life, right? And the reason those questions are urgent right now is because the in-between is exactly where humanity is living, not in the old world anymore. The structures, the certainties, and systems that define the prior era are cracking. Some of them are collapsing, right? And it's happening in real time, and you are witnessing it, right? The new world is not fully visible yet. There's no consensus destination, no complete and clear picture that everyone can agree on. There's just the space in between, right? This is the builder space. This is the void, right? And most people in that space are doing one of 3 things. They're running backward, or they're running back toward what burned down, right? What burned down behind them. Imagine that. Because familiar ruin is less frightening than unfamiliar darkness. Freezing in the middle, waiting for someone with apparent authority to tell them where to move. People who are looking for direction, right? Or people who are pressing forward toward the room they cannot fully see yet, moving on direction rather than certainty, right? The rebirth is an operational lens that demands the third, right? It demands the third option. Deliberately, strategically, eyes wide open. This is what season 4 is doing, not describing the transition from a safe distance, but walking through it with intentionality and producing a flashlight for every section of the path through the content. And tonight we go wide. We look at this in between, not just as a personal experience, but as a civilizational one. We've been talking about the void since season 4 started. Because once you understand that what you are navigating personally and what the world is navigating collectively, and you understand that they're the same transition at scales, right? At different scales, your relationship to your own difficulty changes permanently. You stop integrating and stop interpreting the pressure as evidence that something is wrong with you, right? There's nothing wrong with you. You start reading it as a confirmation that you are inside something real, something that has a name, something that has a destination. That shift in interpretation is not small. It is the difference between a person who's being broken by the moment and a person who is being sharpened by it. Same moment, entirely different outcome, different lens. The variable is the lens, right? The variable is the lens. And my smarts, excuse me, my smarts have been waiting for this segment, right? Because everything I'm about to present is documented, independently verified, and sourced from disciplines with no connection to each other. This is pattern recognition at scale. The pattern is undeniable. Now, across multiple completely independent traditions and analytical systems, ancient Hindu Yugal cycles, Mayan astronomical calendars, modern astrological research, consciousness science, spiritual teacher communities, and secular systems analysis. Researchers arrived at a variation of the same word to describe the current civilizational moment at the same time, right? And that word is rebirth, not reconstruction, not rebuilding, not renewal, not recovery, but rebirth. The word choice matters surgically, right? Reconstruction implies the original blueprint is still valid. Rebuilding implies the bones of what was are worth saving. Recovery implies the goal is to return to a prior state. Renewal implies something that is still fundamentally existing, but just needs refreshing. Rebirth means none of those things. Rebirth means something had to completely die before this was possible. Rebirth means a gestation period in the dark where the new form is developing but not yet visible. Rebirth means to emerge resembling what you were before. And rebirth means the process is not negotiable. You do not ask the universe to pause while you get more comfortable. Rebirth runs on its own clock, and your job is to cooperate with it, not manage it, right? Just like I managed tonight's show. It's a late start, but still managing, right? I named season 4 the Rebirth back in season 3. Before I read any of the global reports circulating right now, before I researched any of the astrological analysis, before I studied any of the consciousness movement data, I named it because the content demanded it, right? Because the community was moving through something that motivation alone could not hold. Push harder, believe in yourself, stay consistent. It's a legitimate system, but it is not built for civilizational transition. For that, you need a transformation architecture, not a performance upgrade. Then the world showed up with the same word from completely different directions, right? And for my final bosses specifically, I need you to sit with the strategic implication of this. When your intellectual architecture and the cultural moment arrive at the same destination independently, that is not luck and it is not branding. That is what real positioning looks like. Not positioning that chases the conversation happening in the world, positioning that articulates what the world is trying to say before the world has the language to say it, right? The world caught up. We, yes, we, the Find a Boss community, Find a Boss nation, Find a Boss family, we were already here, right? And we're already here when the world arrives is the only version of first mover advantage that actually holds, right? First mover advantage. You know, people keep using the term the reset like it's a future event, right? Like there's still a window to prevent it, right? The reset, the reset, the reset, right? Prevent it, postpone it, negotiate. But let me be clear and let me be direct. The reset is not coming. It has been running now for 3 years, right? By multiple serious analytical systems, astrological, sociological, economic, and systems based. The structural reset of the civilization began in 2023. That is when Pluto moved into Aquarius. What you have felt ever since then, right? The institutional failures, the identity fractures, the systems that stop making sense without any visibly changing the rules, without anyone visibly changing the rules. The careers that felt hollow, even when the money was still arriving. The relationships that could not survive the pressure of honest living. That is not turbulence building towards something, that is the thing itself. You've been inside the reset for 3 years, and most people just had no word for it. They had no understanding, right? And the absence of a word for it produced something predictable. When you cannot name what is happening to you, you interpret it personally. You conclude something is wrong with you specifically. You diagnose yourself when the environment is what changed. And a personal diagnosis leads exclusively to personal solutions, right? More effort, better habits, tighter routines, right? And when that moment is actually calling, what that moment is actually calling for is a complete renegotiation of what you were building, right? Why you were building it. And what version of yourself is doing the building. And here's the most important distinction I can make about the reset tonight, right? It is not destroying everything. It is only destroying what was never real, right? Specifically, and without exception, political systems held together by collective agreement not to inspect their machinery too closely, right? Economic structures that only function because people trust the narrative more than the numbers. Relationships, personal, professional, institutional, that survived on the agreement to stay surface level and could not withstand death. Right? Everything is actually built on something solid, right? Think about that. Something solid, like the cornerstone of magnificence, right? It may look different under pressure than it looked in comfortable conditions, but it is standing. And what remains standing after this level of sustained pressure is exactly what you build from, right? For my warriors, you already lived this principle in theater. You already know. In real crisis, in the kind of conditions that strip everything down to what actually is versus what is performing. You have watched people and structures reveal their truth under genuine load. You know the pressure does not create the weakness, it reveals what was always there. That intelligence is not a souvenir from hard times in this season, it is your primary operational asset. You need to use it, you need to understand it, and you need to deploy it, right? Listen, you were placed here as I was placed here on purpose, right? Later start time. Everything has purpose. We had technical issues on purpose, right? And I need you to understand something because what I'm about to say, I need the room in the chat. I need you. You know what? What I'm about to say needs room to breathe. Hold on. Before you react to it, anyway, right? I need you to breathe for a moment, right? And understand this. Do not accept it reflectively. Do not dismiss it reflectively. Sit with it and let it resolve on its own. You are not observing the reset from a distance. You are not a bystander who happened to be standing nearby when civilization hit the gas pedal, when the acceleration hit. You are inside of it. You're in the vehicle, awake. And you're awake with the community around you and the intellectual system beneath you. That is not random. You were placed here on purpose. Two types of people hear that, and two different types of responses are gathered. The first type feels immediate resonance, right? Something in them says yes. There has always been something underneath the chaos that feels like direction rather than accident. If that is you, the resonance is accurate. Do not let anyone who hasn't been through what you've been through talk you out of what your experience is actually telling you. And then the second type, right, is the skeptic. And I have genuine respect for the skeptical mind because it asks the questions that protect people from being manipulated by comfortable narratives. The skeptic says, how do you distinguish assignment from circumstance? And the answer is this, right? Assignment and circumstance feel identical on arrival. The distinction is made entirely by the response, how you handle it. Whether you move through this moment as someone who showed up for a reason or someone who just happened to be present. The reason is constructed by the response, not delivered by the revival or the arrival, right? And for my motivators, I want to stay in this lane with you for a moment. Your particular position in this season is one of the most demanding in the community, right? And I do not think it gets acknowledged at the level it deserves, right? I don't think it does, right? Your function is to hold space for other people's transformation while your own transformation is happening simultaneously. You are expected to carry the answer while you are still inside the question. You are expected to be the stable presence in rooms where your own foundation is shifting. And what I want to say to my motivators is this: the weight you are carrying was not assigned to you because you are supposed to carry it alone indefinitely. It was assigned to you because you were positioned to carry it inside a community that can carry some of it back, right? This show, these Sundays, this community, these are part of your support infrastructure, not just your service location, right? Let the distinction actually land and change something about how you show up here, right? And to everyone, to the full community, to the full Fighter Boss Nation, full Fighter Boss community, full Fighter Boss family, right? Season 4, the rebirth, does not just document transformation. It produces the language for it. And the language matters because in every period of mass transition, the crisis is not only logistical, it is linguistic, right? People feel things they cannot name. Unnamed feelings produce only reaction. Spinning, contracting, grasping for what is familiar, even when what is familiar is irretrievably gone. Named feelings produce navigation. This show names it. This is the assignment, and you are inside of it, right? We're all inside of it. And for my smarts who needed architecture before they will trust the blueprint, here are the 5 concrete, observable, cross-disciplinary forces driving the global awakening that season 4, the rebirth, is broadcasting inside of, right? Force 1. Force 1. Digital saturation is producing spiritual hunger. Yeah, digital saturation is producing spiritual hunger. The most connected civilization in human history by every quantitative measure is also documenting levels of loneliness, disconnection, and meaningless that rival anything in the historical record. Bandwidth is not depth. When digital connection cannot satisfy the hunger for genuine meaning, people turn inward. That inward turn into first breath of the awakening. It is not the mystical in its origin. It is mechanical. The technology revealed the insufficiency of technology, and the soul is responding. And force number 2. Institutional collapse producing an authoritarian vacuum. The structures previous generations trusted supply, meaning structure and safety, are not failing sequentially. Where one fails and trust redirects to another, they are they are failing in parallel, right? Government credibility, medical institutional trust, media authority, religious leadership, all under simultaneous pressure. When external authority dissolves across multiple domains at once,
The individual is forced to build internal authority. For people without an architecture for that, it is destabilizing. For people in this room, it is the most important invitation of their lives, right? And then force number three. Force number three is important. Force number three is the collective pain becoming collective medicine, right? Pandemics, wars, active conflicts, economic inequality at levels not seen in a century. These are not punishments, they are pressure. And pressure on human consciousness produces one of two outcomes: permanent collapse or permanent opening. The determining variable is not the intensity of the pressure, it is whether the person under the pressure has community, architecture, and a reason to choose breakthrough over collapse. We in the Final Boss Nation, Final Boss family, Final Boss community, we choose breakthrough, right? We choose breakthrough. The existence of this community is not peripheral to the equation, it is central, right? And then force number four. Cosmic and cyclical convergence, right? Whether you operate inside an astrological tradition or a purely empirical one, the observable fact is multiple once in generations planetary alignments occurring inside the same narrow window. Secular systems, thinkers, pattern analysis, and analysts, and astronomical traditions are arriving at the same conclusion from completely different starting positions. The structural architecture of this civilization is shifting at a fundamental level. When independent methodologies converge on identical conclusions, that convergence carries evidential weight that no single methodology can produce alone. And there's force five, right? Force five. The awakening has no borders. This is the most strategically significant force for this community. This shift is being documented simultaneously across cultures, geographies, traditions, and demographics that have zero connection to each other. A yoga practitioner in Los Angeles and a monk in Bhutan are arriving at the same frequency without ever meeting, which means the community positioned to speak to the global convergence with precision and authenticity is not limited by zip code, demographic, or cultural context. The ceiling does not exist. Season 4 is broadcasting into all 5 of these forces live every week, right? Every single week. Now listen, let's pivot for a second. I want to spend some time in this episode, in this specific portion, right? In a specific space. And most of you are occupying it right now, right? Not describing it from outside, but in it. Because talking about people's reality from a comfortable distance is not what sitting down Sundays is built for. The space between what was and what will be has a particular texture that is difficult to describe to anyone who has not been inside it, and immediately recognizable to anyone who has. The old door is either closed or on fire. The new door is not fully visible. The hallway between them has no map on the wall, no furniture, and lighting that is sufficient only for the next step, not the destination. You can see where your foot lands. You cannot see where your foot or where you will end up. That is the hallway. And that is where the majority of the people in this community are living in right now, personally. And where the humanity is living right now, collectively, right? The human response to that space is almost always one of three things. The first is regression, running back toward the burning room because familiar destruction is less frightening than unfamiliar certainty. The burning room has a known layout. You know where everything was, even when it is on fire. You can navigate it because you have memorized the room. The second response is paralysis, freezing in the center of the hallway, waiting for someone with apparent authority and a confident voice to show up and tell you which direction is current or correct. And the third response is forward motion, right? Moving toward the room you cannot fully see, not on certainty, but on direction. Trusting on compass, right? I always have a compass near me. Always. I have a compass tattooed on my arm. Always have a compass near me, right? Always. Right? Even when there's no map available. Even when no map is available. The rebirth demands the third. But I want to be precise about what forward motion in the hallway actually looks like, because the way it gets described in most motivational content does not match the way it actually feels in the body. And that gap creates a specific kind of shame in people who are moving forward but do not feel the way they were told moving forward should feel, right? Moving forward in the hallway does not feel like fearlessness. Fearlessness is not a sustainable human operational state. Anyone performing fearlessness in a genuine hallway is performing. Period. Full stop. Moving forward feels like continuing to move while fear is fully present. Fear as a travel companion rather than a command. That is a different relationship to the same feeling. And the relationship determines everything about what you do next. It's always about what you do, how you react. Moving forward does not require clarity about the destination. You need confidence in the direction, not a picture of where you will end up. Direction and destination are not the same thing. You cannot move with full commitment in a direction while the specific destination remains unresolved. The commitment to direction is entirely achievable even when visibility is low, right? And for my warriors specifically, every deployment taught you to operate inside incomplete information. You never had the full picture. You had enough to take the next step, and you took it. That operational discipline does not expire when you leave the military context. It transfers. The hallway of civilian transition is not fundamentally different from the hallway of theater. The skills followed you home. You must trust them. You must trust the process, right? You must trust the process. Right? You must trust it. That impulse that you feel when you're trusting the process is exactly what you should be feeling, right? And most people in 2026 are feeling functionally reactive, feeling something happens and then they respond. More things happen, they respond again. The loop is continuous. Stimulus, response, stimulus, response. Never slowing down long enough to actually choose what they're doing versus simply reacting to what is being done to them. They are making adjustments. And there is a significant difference between a life built on decisions and a life built on adjustments, right? Sitting down Sundays is structural, interruption, deliberate, non-negotiable, right? It's not passive content consumption, but active engagement with you in your own life, right? Through an honest lens about the world we are actually in. There's a difference between information that entertains you and information that changes what you do on the following day. And tonight is built so tomorrow you wake up with change. And I'm at the and I want to give you a question, right? I want to give you a question. Just one question. One question for that. And I need you to take genuine thought into this question, right? Take a moment and think about this. Right? And I want you to actually go into the question and let it touch you. Let it marinate, right? And the question is this: what in your life right now is asking to be reborn? In your life is asking to be reborn. Not fixed, not improved, not optimized, but reborn, right? What is asking to fully die so something true can come through in its place, right? Think about it. Think about it for the next 60 seconds. Close your eyes if that helps. Let the question fully engage your mental. Be completely embedded in it. Let it engulf you. What needs to be reborn, or what is trying to be reborn? What surfaced is not a suggestion. Whatever answer you came up is not a suggestion. That right there, my friends, is a signal. The immediacy with what is or what has arrived. And for most of you, something arrived very fast and is not random. That thing has been waiting for this season, waiting for a lens that gives it permission to die rather than being continuously resuscitated by your effort and your fear of letting go. The resistance you felt when that answer came to you, when it surfaced. And I know there was some resistance from most of you, because some version of you, not that, anything but that version of you, that resistance is not a warning to step back. It is a compass. Resistance of the specific texture points exactly at what needs your intentional attention inside the rebirth season, right? Make a note of it. Write it down, right? Write it down. Because you're going to need it moving forward in this conversation, right? You're going to need it moving forward. Look, people move through transformation more effectively when they understand the design they are operating inside of, right? When you know the structure, you orient within it. You know the phase. You know what it demands. And you stop interpreting the difficulty of the current phase as evidence of malfunction, when the difficulty is actually evidence of correct function, right? Season 3, The Reckoning, it ran through all the way to episode 200. A reckoning is not an argument with external reality. It is not a crisis that happens to you from outside. A reckoning is the moment when the gap between what you have been performing and what you actually are becomes impossible to sustain. Right? There's a clear difference between season 1 and season 2, season 1, 2, and 3, and season 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right? The energy is different. And you have to understand that, because when every decision, every structure, every version of yourself you've been presenting, all of it arrives in your field of vision simultaneously, and you demand to be seen without softening the image, no productive distance, no strategic avoidance, no more, right? That was what season 3 was about. Season 4, the rebirth, and the distinction between rebirth and every word we might use for what follows a reckoning is exact and non-interchangeable. Recovery tries to retrieve what existed before. Rebuilding assumes the original design had sound bones worth constructing. Renewal suggests something still fundamentally present that just needs refreshing. None of those are rebirth. Rebirth means the prior form is complete, not what was valuable in it, not what was good. The form itself, the container, the identity structure, the operating system, the prior version of you ran on, right? You're being upgraded. And you're in that space between upgrade. You know, when you look at your computer as it being upgraded, and there's a percentage that grows, right? It goes from 10%, 20%, 30%, 40%, 40% to 50, 60, 70, until it's complete. That's where you are. Those are 2 endpoints, the start and the finish. And you're in the middle of that, right? You're being upgraded. Civilization is being upgraded, and we're in the middle of the upgrade, right? What comes next is not a version of what was. When you upgrade your computer, it was one version. When it's upgraded, it's a new version. You're in the middle of the upgrade, right? It is something genuinely new, right? Windows 10 is not Windows 11, right? And it's something that could not exist without the prior form completing its cycle. What you're moving in right now is that space, and it's not complete, right? And this is not comfortable. I understand that, right? And I want to be clear about that, because it's not comfortable for me, right? When I was hit with the rebirth and the understanding of it, whoa, you're talking about somebody shedding and losing. I've been losing weight ever since, right? The rebirth lens is a truth lens, not a comfort lens, right? And the truth is that much of what people are mourning right now, personally and collectively, is not loss. It is completion. Loss and completion are not the same experience. Loss implies something was taken that should still be here. Completion means a cycle ran its full course and is done. Both carry grief. Only completion carries release alongside the grief. And release is the prerequisite for what the harvest produces. Right? Season 5. The harvest launches at episode 300. 89 episodes from tonight. And this is not a reward given to those who endured the most difficulty. The harvest is the precise, accurate result of what was planted during the reckoning and the rebirth. The result reflects the planting without exception, without negotiation, without alternative. You cannot harvest what was not planted. The cycles do not bend. Reckoning, rebirth, harvest. This is not a podcast architecture. It is the complete human transformation sequence mapped onto seasons, because seasons are how nature actually produces change and processes it. You do not skip winter because you prefer warmth. The cycle is the design, And right now, the entire planet is living inside this same 3-part sequence at civilizational scale, right? Think about the upgrade breaking down in thirds. The first 33%, the second 33%, and the last 33%, right? The last. Reckoning, rebirth, and harvest, right? Think about it. At 89 episodes away. Seal that. Concrete it into your mental. Analyze it, right? 5 shows per week. Sitting Down Sundays, Motivation Mondays, Tech Tuesdays, Merger Wednesdays, Special Guest Thursdays. 5 per week. 89 episodes from tonight, approximately 17 to 18 weeks out. Late June, early August, right? That is when season 5, The Harvest, begins on episode 300. Now, let me tell you precisely what the world looks like in late July and why that timing is architecturally exact rather than coincidentally timed. At the same time, Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, right? I'm going to say that again. Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, which is identified in earlier of this show, right? And it's identified as the most significant astrological configuration in 165 years. Completed its initial wave on February 20, 2026. The structural shock to global systems, the acceleration of institutional dissolution, the mass consciousness disruption that comes with the level of cosmic pressure. The first wave of that will be processed enough to be visible in the rearview mirror by the time episode 300 arrives. Not resolved, not wrapped up, but past its acute phase. What changed at that point is the question, right? Right now, in the middle of the rebirth season, the dominant question in the collective consciousness is diagnostic. What is happening to me? What is happening to us? What is wrong? The question of someone in the middle of the hallway trying to make sense of the hallway while standing inside of it. By the time the harvest arrives, the question shifts. It becomes, what do I do with what just happened? Past tense, contextualized. The question of someone who has come through the pressure and is now standing at the threshold of a new room. Looking at everything that survived the transition and asking what gets constructed from what remains. That question, what do I build from this, is the exact entry point of season 5, The Harvest. And from my final bosses, the people asking the question in the late summer of 2026 of this year are your clients, your customers, your audience, your team. Every person in your professional and personal sphere who came from the rebirth, and are completely intact will be standing at the threshold needing someone who can answer with authority that was not manufactured but lived. The authority of someone who did not just survive the hallway but plan it inside of it, right? And here is the architectural reality that has no exceptions in the history of human development. The harvest reflects the planting with perfect accuracy. The person who arrives at the harvest season with empty hands did not have them taken. They did not plant during the planting season. The planting season is their next 89 episodes. What you put in the ground between tonight and the next 89 episodes till we arrive at episode 300 where our harvest begins, what season 5 produces will be in your hands. That is not a waiting period. It is the most consequential planning window of this entire cycle, right? The entire cycle. And I want to connect something, right? I want to connect something for you, for the community, right? Because I think genuinely people sometimes experience the 5 shows as separate programming, when the reality is all 5 are different access points into one unified intellectual project, right? The thread running underneath all of it is most visible when you understand the relationship between what we do on Sunday nights and what we go deep on every Wednesday, right? Merger Wednesdays is the doctoral grade content arm of this podcast. When I say doctoral grade, I mean exactly that. This content is being built in direct relationship with my doctoral program in AI Foundations and Ethical Considerations, right? Every Merger Wednesday episode is web search verified, cross-referenced, and constructed to the standard of serious academic rigor. Then translated into language that does not require a PhD to absorb. The mission is always to bring the highest level of thinking to the widest possible community without dumbing it down, right? We are at Merger Wednesday upcoming episode that just passed. Well, not upcoming, the one that just passed, episode 13, right? And episode 209 of The Final Boss, right? That was just this Wednesday. Go check it out. The full year 1 series, right, is almost complete. It's titled The Consciousness Sovereignty Architecture. That title is descriptive rather than decorative. The series is literally constructing an architecture, week by week, episode by episode, building a comprehensive intellectual system for understanding and navigating the convergence of human consciousness with networked artificial intelligence. The convergence is the merge, and the merge is not a metaphor. It is the empirically accelerating, historically unprecedented event of human consciousness and machine intelligence developing in direct relation with each other at scale, right? Across every major domain of human life simultaneously. The question it raises is not primarily technological. It is existential, right? Existential. What is distinctively or distinctly human? What is authentic experience? What is sovereign identity? These questions are not, these questions are becoming urgent, not because philosophers decided to ask them, but because the technological landscape is raising the question itself. And it's raising the question of whether anyone wants to engage them or not. And here's the thread that connects Sunday night to Wednesday night, right? And this is what civilization is being built. The global spiritual awakening we have been discussing tonight is not a parallel event into technological evolution or revolution. They are the same event observed from 2 different positions. The awakening is the human consciousness response to acceleration of machine intelligence. As AI becomes more pervasive, more capable, more embedded in daily human experience, the hunger for authentic depth, genuine meaning, and sovereign identity intensifies. People are turning inward because the external landscape is demanding it. The reset is the civilizational version of this at the level of systems and structures. The merge is the same force at the level of consciousness and identity. Both are dimensions of one fundamental transition, a civilization moving from one mode of being to another, right? Season 4, The Rebirth, is where this community builds the consciousness infrastructure to shape that transition, rather be absorbed by it. Wednesday nights, we go deeper into the mechanics. Sunday nights, we hold the perimeter view. Know what you are inside of it. It is larger than the podcast, right? With over 350,000 people around multiple platforms. Let me make the specific argument here. And let me make it about this community tonight. It's not a celebration of metrics. It's a claim about what the composition and the scale of this community proves about the nature of the current moment. 350,000 followers across platforms, 5 shows per week, 4 community identities, smarts, final bosses, motivators, warriors. Each identity represents a different relationship to the same pursuit. The smarts arrived through intellectual engagement. They found a space that honored the complexity that had always sensed existed, but rarely encountered, honored in public conversation. The final bosses arrived through strategic necessity. They were actively building something and needed a community that operated at the level of real construction rather than motivational performance. The motivators arrived through service obligation, people responsible for other people's development who needed standards that matched the weight of their responsibility. The warriors arrived through survival intelligence, people whose experience of the world had been too real for most communities to hold, finding a space that did not require them to pretend otherwise. 4 different roads, 4 different needs, 1 community, 1 conversation. Think carefully about what the convergence actually represents. These are not people who came from shared cultural background, shared socioeconomic position, shared geography, shared intellectual tradition. They arrived from a radically different directions and found that the context met them at their specific point of need. Content that does not, I'm sorry, content that does not do it through sophisticated targeting. It does it because it is speaking to something universal, something that lives underneath identity category and speaks directly to the human being inside that category, inside the hallway. The Force 5 from earlier that I spoke of, the borderless nature of the global awakening, is not an abstract claim. It is a visible structure of this community, the same quality that researchers are documenting in the worldwide awakening moment and movement. Independent people in unconnected contexts arriving at the same frequency. That's what this community is about. People organized around 4 identities and single intellectual community. This community is not an audience assembled around content. It is a movement that uses content as its gathering point. And there is significant difference between those two things. Audiences consume, movements produce. What this community is positioned to produce in its individual members and its collective cultural output across 89 of the next episodes and to the harvest is not something that can be engineered after the fact. It is a result of what has been planted across every season that preceded this episode tonight. You, my friends, yes, you are the evidence, not of content strategy, of a civilizational truth about what happens when people who are genuinely awake find each other. We are the collective. Listen, no one leaves tonight. No one leaves sitting down Sundays with philosophy and no practice, right? We have to put work in practice because philosophy without application is expensive entertainment. And I'm not here to entertain you, right? This podcast is not for entertainment purposes. Oh, we do give that disclosure, right? You invested your time. The return on that investment is determined entirely by what you do with it between now and the next time we see each other. And let me be specific, right? The first action, go back to what surfaced in the midpoint in that question I asked, right? The thing that came up when I asked what is asking to be reborn, the thing that you're supposed to wrote down, right? Not the thing that you're in transition. This is not a category. It's a name. You named it. It's a noun, right? A name sounds like this. My primary income source is the rebirth. My marriage is the rebirth. My identity as a leader is in the rebirth, right? One thing primarily named, written down. The act of writing it converts ambient anxiety and navigational pressure, under navigational pressure, right? Anxiety is unnamed pressure. Named pressure becomes a decision, and decisions produce movement where anxiety produces only more anxiety. And then the second action of this show, I needed you to identify what you planted during season 3, The Reckoning, right? Go back mentally to season 3. What did you face that you had been systematically avoiding? What commitment came out of what you faced, even in the quiet, even without announcing it, right? That commitment is what the rebirth is currently germinating. You need to know what is in the ground so you can tend to it correctly across the next 9 episodes. Because unintended seeds and fertile soil still fail. Tending requires knowing what you planted. And then the third action, tell one person in this community, one person out loud, what you're building, not what you're surviving, not what is difficult, what you are constructing. Say it in the chat right now. Drop it right now in the chat, right? What you are constructing, because final bosses are not defined by the weight of their conditions. They are defined by what the conditions are producing. And speaking what you are building to someone who can hold the weight of it is not vulnerability. It is structural reinforcement. External declaration maintains the commitment through pressure. The internal intention alone cannot sustain, right? These 3 actions that I just spoke of, give these 3 actions 20 minutes of your time, right? You don't have to be dramatic. They don't need to trend. They are invisible, right? You just wrote them down. That's planting, right? That's the kind of thing that shows up at the harvest as fruit in your hands while other people wonder where it came from. You are either a conscious participant in your own transformation or a passenger in the world's transformation, or a passenger in somebody else's vehicle, right? Stop being a passenger in somebody else's vehicle, right? You need to be the driver of your life. Both those people arrive at season 5, The Harvest, but only one arrives holding the fruit that was planted, right? Hard verdicts, no soft landings, people. This is what we do on Sitting Down, right? Count one, right? Count one. The world named its movement the Rebirth before it knew this community had built a season already around it. The confirmation is not coincidental, and it is not a branding win. It is a distinction between content that chases the conversation and content that generates the vocabulary the conversation eventually borrows. The Final Boss podcast generates vocabulary. Know what you are and know what you're a part of. Number 2, the reset is not a future event. It is a 3-year-old active process that most people were not positioned to name until the evidence became impossible to ignore. This community had the name before the evidence was undeniable. The time to build the intellectual infrastructure is always before the world needs the infrastructure. You are waiting for stability to return before you begin constructing. You, my friends, are building permanently behind the moment. You're behind. And then count number 3. The harvest is a result, not a reward, right? This distinction has no exceptions in the history of architectural or agricultural, economic, or developmental record, right? Results reflects inputs with precision. The next 89 episodes are the inputs. What you plant in them is what season 5 carries in your hands. The harvest does not negotiate, it just reports, right? And then count 4. 350,000 plus people organized around 4 distinct identities, arriving completely different directions, converging in a single intellectual community. That is not an algorithm outcome. That is the live demonstration of what the global awakening looks like when it has an organized home. The community is the proof of concept for what the borderless awakening can produce when it finds structure. And then count 5. You are not observing the shift, you are the shift in motion. The global awakening is not happening to people at a distance who you are watching from a safe position. You are inside it, awake, equipped, and connected, navigating the same transition with the same architecture. This is not a privilege that asks nothing of you. That is a responsibility with specific demands. Demand is that you do the work in the planting season so you arrive at the harvest holding something real, right? 5 counts, all 5 stand, no appeal. 89 episodes to go. Plant something real this week. And before I release you tonight, I want to leave you with this one thing. This one thing, right? Not everything we've covered, not a recap, but this one thing, right? And this one thing needs to travel with you into the week. The world is in a rebirth. You are in a rebirth. Both are true simultaneously, overlapping in a way that is not a burden, but a calling. You have been placed inside one of the most significant civilizational transitions in record history, or recorded history, I should say, with a community around you, with architecture beneath you, and a language available to you that most people navigating the same moment do not have. Do not waste this position. That is the sentence. All 4 words. Do not waste the position, right? And to my smarts, the analysis is not the end of the process, it is the beginning. Let what you understand tonight produce a decision before Monday. Analysis that produces no decision is expensive thinking dressed as productivity. So my final bosses, build in the instability. The empire does not wait for conditions to stabilize before it rises. It is being built right now by the people who understand that the instability is the condition, not an obstacle to that condition. Your competitors, right? Your competitors who are waiting for clarity are ceding ground that would not be recoverable when they finally move. And to my motivators, you gave everything this week to the rooms that needed you. Before you sleep tonight, let one person in your life give something back. Receive it without deflecting. The strength required to receive is not smaller than the strength required to give. We're in this season, the rebirth. It might be larger. And to my warriors, keep standing. Not because it is comfortable, not because the terrain is clear or the outcome is guaranteed, because what is on the other side of this season, the harvest at episode 300, is worth every step. Every step, right? Every step through every dark section of the hallway. You have walked through worse. You came out on the other side of worse. This hallway ends. The harvest is at the end of the hallway. I am the Final Boss. This is the Final Boss podcast. You are the Final Boss community, Final Boss Nation, Final Boss family. We're all in a rebirth together, collectively, 89 episodes to go to the harvest. Plant something tonight. Plant something this week. Remember, same chair, same time, next Sunday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for an inspirational episode of Motivation Mondays, live at 9 p.m. Hopefully, no, I'm not going to say that. Because it was no coincidence that tonight we had tech issues. It was deliberate. We arrived when we were supposed to arrive. And sometimes being late is on time. Smarts, Final Bosses, Motivators, Warriors, I bid you adieu. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being here. Apologies. No. Deliberate apologies. It was all deliberate. All deliberate. Not on my behalf, but on behalf of the rebirth. Y'all have a great night. See you again tomorrow night for Motivation Monday. Have a good one. Until then, 9 p.m. live. See you then. And to each and every single one of you, if this marinates with you, let it marinate in your spine. And always remember, there's a heavy pain that comes with discipline, but the pain of regret is even heavier. I am here. We are here. And to all of you, no matter where you're watching from, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And always be aware, right? Be aware of these. Be balanced, be equal, and be smart. That is our show. Y'all have a great one. See you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. for Motivation Mondays. Talk to you soon.
They thought it was over. They thought the fire burned out. But fire doesn't destroy the chosen. It forges them. Hosted by Turbotheceo. New energy, new strategy. Every setback builds strength. Every loss builds strategy. And every leader rises again. The rebirth begins. Season 4. Bigger conversations. Real strategy. Power moves only. Monday motivation. Tech Tuesday. Merger Wednesday. Special guest Thursdays. Sit down Sundays. Season 4 starts now. Tap in or get left behind. Because bosses don't wait, they lead.